Good evening, good afternoon, whatever time it is where you are, and welcome to the Arcadia Round Table. I think this is our 4th episode. Last week, on our 3rd episode, we learnt that the Darge Knight, when given the option, chose to kill a video game dog. Darge, I believe in second chances, so you're welcome back here. We're going to help you with your rehabilitation. How you been doing this last week?
Yeah, I've been alright. I had forgot about that until you just brought that back up. But yeah, no, I've been alright. Finally, after 2.5 years, got round to completing the Ascent because I was plagued with issues with that game from the get-go. So that was nice. Not played a lot of Death Stranding, but yeah, been another good week. Some topics to talk about, and yeah, looking forward to it.
See, Darge is very, very optimistic. We actually didn't come in with a whole lot of topics today. We're going to find some things. We're going to fill the time, no problem at all. But you lot in chat, if there are things that you found interesting this week that you want to bring to our attention, by all means yell, because I think we'll find time to go back and forth a little bit. Chris, you've been in London at the weekend. I know that much. Have you had a good week? How you doing?
Yeah, good week, thank you. And fortunate enough to go to London for the Carabao Cup final. If anyone is into football or soccer, if not, then I'll swerve over that quickly. Yeah, all good. Just busy as normal. And obviously been keeping an eye on various news items today, and obviously speaking to a few people and things like that, which we can get into later.
I'm sure we will do. So Chris obviously has a history working with Sony Studios, at Sony Studios, and knows various people, particularly from Liverpool. So directly impacted today, but we'll get onto that in a little bit. First of all, Chris, have you had a chance this week to get some games in? Have you played anything good?
I've played a little bit of Helldivers. Obviously, I was either extremely lucky or wasn't plagued by any kind of server issues. I know they obviously ramped the servers up to like 700,000 concurrents over the weekend, but obviously I managed to get into Helldivers 2 games prior to that. I had the kind of like servers at capacity, but then it just counted down like 7 seconds and chucked me straight in. So I don't know if it was, and maybe some of the other people can answer. Obviously, I'm playing on PC, so I don't know if it was kind of plaguing.
You got
PS5
very lucky.
more,
As far as I can tell, I've played it on both. As far as I can tell, they don't actually have a login queue. So when it is at capacity, it counts down for like 59 seconds, or like, I'll give you a short one first of all. It'll attempt to log on, and if it fails, it doesn't put you in any kind of queue. It just says, "Well, we'll try again in a minute," and does another 50-odd second countdown. Tries again. So it is very. This is like the downside is there's no like you're going to be in the queue for 10 minutes. It's like good luck, prick, and it just tries again every now and again. But you got lucky both times.
Well, yeah, I was very lucky, and then obviously a load of random people joined my ship and game straight away. We went into a few games and played. So yeah, I was very lucky. Obviously, it looks like the capacity increase was successful over the weekend with people managing to play, according to obviously the CEO of Helldivers. So yeah, hopefully the three of us can jump in at some point and actually get a game in all at once.
Definitely.
I mean, yeah, we can do it right now if you want. Sod the podcast. Let's go play some Helldivers. It's not true, by the way. If you're here, thank you for coming. It is much appreciated. Yeah, they made a couple of changes. They changed it so that, yeah, the server capacity, I think they went up from like 400,000 to 800,000 over the course of its launch, or maybe even a bigger jump than that. And they made it so that it actually times people out if they're not playing. It had an issue where people would walk away and hold their place on the game overnight if they could. So that seemed to make a big difference, and you can actually get on that game and play that game right now if you do enjoy it. I say right now, I mean after the podcast. Chris, when you played with those random people, did you play open mic? Did you talk to them? Did they understand your accent?
I mean, to be fair, they did. I mean, to be fair, good experience. Obviously, I mentioned it before with Chronic and some of the other guys that I've played with. So yeah, open mic seemed to be a good bunch. The guys were working at a team and stuff who I was playing with. So yeah, I've had really good experience so far. Obviously, the experiences haven't been good enough for me to go on Twitter and start requesting a Helldivers 2 film like some people have started requesting. And actually, if they want to watch a Helldivers 2 film, then just watch Starship Troopers, and that's the closest thing you'll get to it. So, but no, it's good. Good on the studio. I know it kind of caused a bit of controversy, didn't it? Because I think Chris String, wasn't it, from Games Industry Biz, said it was Sony's first, games as a service
success
game.
At the first attempt or something, wasn't it? Yeah, right.
Which caused a lot of outcry and stuff. So I've got plenty of time and respect for Chris, but I think sometimes he's misunderstood or misquoted on some things. But he did get himself in a bit of a pickle because he replied to someone saying that I didn't say that, and then it's exactly what he said, and then he deleted his message saying I didn't say that. So I'm not quite sure what happened there, but there we go.
All the Twitter dramas. You've got to be careful how you even compliment something these days. Got to be careful. Someone's going to get upset by something. Which is why I stay away from it. I upset people just by I complimented in my own way Nintendo for not laying anyone off in the last decade or whatever, and that upset people as well. So anything that you say is going to upset someone.
How dare they keep jobs?
Yeah, indeed. Darge, what have you been up to? You said you played a little bit of The Ascent. Now that you've finished it, do you recommend it? Is it a brilliant game?
It's a great game. It's the final boss was a little bit anticlimactic, but
sorry, I've been meaning to ask. Did they patch it and fix it, or were you just like lucky that it was working because it was just
I don't know,
single player,
because
isn't it?
when it when it launched day one on the Game Pass, we was all trying to do it on that. And if you remember, I think it may have been us with Colt and something like that. And some of you managed to stay with it and get through. And every time I connected, I was bugs and stuff like that. And I didn't realise I ended up buying. I had it bought on Steam, so I must have tried it on Steam and was still having issues with cross playing between Xbox and stuff like that. So I left it. And like I say, in our Discord, Patrick and Tony had mentioned it. I said, I'll try again with that game. And this time it was all right. But like I say, I said to him, I didn't realise how far in the game I'd gotten, you know, in the past.
Yeah, I think it was really broken, wasn't it? But
Yeah, it was...
I mean, the experience as knowing where we were was broken because we just kept jumping in, doing someone else's missions.
I think when you host, I think when you host a game, it's one of those games like Outriders where that the host is their save that you play on. So if you hosted a game and I jumped on you, but we'd finished on mine, we'd be like kind of like that. You know what I mean? I think it's just that's how it works. But yeah, so like I say, I sort of done some sessions with Tony and Patrick, but they're over in the States, which they give me shit for now for beating the game without them there. But yeah, I just wanted to get it done. But I'll tell you what, as a showpiece and the particle effects and everything in that game, some of the carnage that ensues when you're playing through that, it's definitely something that everyone should at least have a go of. It's quite easy to play, you know what I mean? It's just like a sort of twin stick shooter, so to speak. Really glad to have finally got that one done. But other than that,
and now that you are done with it, are you done with it? Done with it, or are you going to do the heist DLC as well?
No, so I said to the other guys, like, if they want me to, I keep it installed. I said if they want me to jump on their saves at any point and play with them, I'll do that. And then if we're all ready to go with the DLC, I can't imagine it'd be too long. So maybe we can work that out between us and just whack it out, you know. But aside from the Ascent, you managed to get me to play some Nintendo games on Sunday.
We did, didn't we?
So I bought a Switch for my boy because he likes Sonic, and I didn't want him smashing the PC. You might be able to hear him, but I bought him a Switch to have, and then he wanted Mario things because he saw Mario, so got Mario Kart again. And then he suggested playing it, so I thought, well, let's try it. But it was actually a laugh, you know. Mario Kart, there's a reason it's one of the best-selling games, you know, let alone the lifespan that it's had. It's also a fun game, you know. And, we had a bit of a laugh with that. Tony came in with his modded Switch and blew us all away. But aside from that, it was fairly competitive and fun up until that point.
Yeah, not sure about competitive. I was nowhere near anything on that one. But we did. So every Sunday we have community streams where we play all kinds of things. And this week I insisted that everyone brings out the Switch, partly because I needed to know if mine still works after I threw it over my shoulder a couple of years ago. Turns out that it does, and we played that. We've also got quite a lot going on in the Discord. If you're into your Helldivers or Enshrouded, Power World, that kind of game, there's always things going on. So I do recommend joining up to that if you can. You've also got, as this stream goes on, there's a YouTube Q&A box. If you want to stick some questions in there at the end of the show, we'll pick as many as we can fit in within our little time frame. Answer some of those as well. But for now, so we move on to the topics. We're going to start...
Why not?
Sad faces. We're going to start on the negatives because today you've probably all seen it already, but today Sony announced their round of layoffs, and I say their round of layoffs because the whole industry has been announcing layoffs left, right and centre for the past year essentially. Sony have done quite a big one today. They're laying off 900 people, which is 8% of their workforce. I say Sony, I am specifically referring to Interactive Entertainment, so the PlayStation division of Sony. They are laying off the entirety of Sony London. They are drastically reducing Firesprite Studios, which is a Liverpool-based studio that Chris is very familiar with. They're also laying some people off from Insomniac, Naughty Dog, and Gorilla, as well as smaller numbers of people from pretty much all of their other studios. So pretty deep cuts across Sony that are obviously nothing to celebrate in any way whatsoever. But Chris in particular, I'm going to get your take on this because you've obviously worked at Sony and you were obviously in and around Liverpool. The Firesprite studio, as is my understanding anyway, There are people from the Liverpool studio there. Is that right? Do you know people directly affected by this?
Yeah, so obviously Firesprite was kind of born out of Studio Liverpool when that was kind of laid to rest, so to speak. So Graham Ankers and a couple of other guys started Firesprite, and also started the kind of sister company in Manchester. Can't remember what it's called off the top of my head. But obviously they were doing a lot of kind of Astrobot work and various other things for Sony. And then I think it was just, the writing was on the cards before Sony would acquire that studio, which they did a few years back. And obviously they were they had a large remote workforce, which I'm not sure whether a lot of people know. So they did have an office based in Liverpool. They're now based in Sony Liverpool's HQ, so to speak. But they had a large workforce. I think at one point they were kind of nearly 300 people strong, but a lot of remote workers in Canada, America, different countries. I think like a lot of studios, we discussed it a few weeks ago, so your Embracers, your Microsoft, even more independent studios kind of ramped up the workforce during kind of COVID and pre-COVID, post-COVID, try and get things fixed, finished off, etc. So, and Guerrilla did the same, really. So it was kind of inevitable that this may happen, given obviously once we get through that period. It's something which is not uncommon for Sony. So I think a lot of people are kind of on Twitter are talking about it as if it's this thing out of the blue and so on and so forth. And obviously, within my time at Sony, 14, nearly 15 years, there was layoffs annually, and it was almost kind of this cycle that would happen. And obviously, we were working on concepts, and if some concepts didn't get off the ground, then inevitably there'd be a headcount reduction, and there'd be layoffs. And it just from experience, as people can imagine, it's a really horrible experience because you kind of come in to work all jolly and jovial, and then there's like kind of letters handed out, and then people go off into a different room with HR, and then unless you're kind of friends, you never see them people again. So they just don't walk back in the room and disappear. I think obviously some of the Studio London guys and girls got cut quite deep because kind of Jim was there last week, getting pictures with people and obviously would have known what was going on. So I always think like honesty is the best policy with people. Obviously, guys at Firesprite are being affected. Guys at Guerrilla, other people within Sony that I kind of know are kind of going through the mill at the moment. I think luckily Playground have reached out to a load of people and said there's jobs going on, Forza and Fable, etc. So hopefully those people can find jobs elsewhere. Obviously, for our like American audience, that's still a good 300 or so miles away, 200 maybe, from Liverpool. So it would require a big relocation for some people who might have families and stuff. So it's not as easy as them for them to do that. But there's obviously still some really good independents and Wushu and Lucid and other studios within Liverpool that could hopefully pick up some of those positions. But it's just a difficult time. I think it's a difficult time for all businesses, but obviously there's a lot of people who are passionate about game studios and they kind of feel it when it happens, and no one wants to see people lose jobs. But it's something for those who've been fortunate enough to work for Sony. This is something that happened quite regularly when we were there, and obviously when Sony took over Psygnosis, it wasn't that long before Manchester studio got shut down, and Cambridge, and there's various other studios that got shut down. But it just happens when you expand teams to try and kind of finish work or chuck resource at projects, unfortunately.
It's one of those things where the gaming industry has been notorious for job stability anyway, long term. And part of it is because the complexities of developing a game. As a project goes, if you've got a game that's going to take I say 2 for the olden days, but maybe 6 years to make now. All the different elements of that game do not take the same amount of time to complete, so it's very difficult to give people permanent roles there, which is why the industry favours contracts so heavily. But this is a little bit different, isn't it? Because this is to do with over expanding, contracting, trying to get their profit margins up rather than just like your project is done, we don't need you anymore. And this was a more unexpected cut, not entirely unexpected, because it was leaked when the Insomniac ransom happened and data leaked from there. That was the first kind of direct inkling, beyond speculating because everybody's doing it. That was the first like direct confirmation that Sony were looking to make redundancies as well, which was a horrible way for those people to find out, because in those documents it said that they were looking to cut about 50 roles from Insomniac, and nobody at Insomniac was aware that was happening, really, like below the very top levels. So they've had that hanging over them for a while, despite a very accomplished release in Spider-Man 2, which it sucks in general, doesn't it, Darge? Have you got anything poignant to add on the redundancies at Sony? Is there any thoughts that you can offer there? Because it's a difficult one, isn't it?
Poignant? I don't know. Yeah. I definitely will give an opinion on it. But like, my opinion is the layoff situation it's just like, you know, Chris sort of touched on it a little while ago. It's a cycle thing. Yeah, we see it all the time. Like you're saying, with regards to development, obviously on the other scale of things with studio closures and stuff like that, it's a completely different ballgame. But layoffs in general, like, you know, I'm a roofer, as you know. You know, if we want to get a job done, we'll call people in and we go, come help us push this one over the line, and then you're gone again. You know what I mean? Obviously, I know it's a different, you know, game development's a longer period of time and stuff like that. And, you know, like episode 13, I love flicking his nips and all that, you know what I mean? But he's just put in the chat there, yes, Playground, save the peeps if possible. And it's like, you know, everyone would want to help everyone, you know what I mean? But at the end of the day, Playground would then announce a load of layoffs, and then Playground would be the enemy, you know what I mean? So what it is a case of teams hiring, you know, for a purpose and then letting them go. You know, it's not nice to see. It's never nice to see, you know what I mean? But it's happening everywhere. Like Microsoft obviously announced, was it 1,600 with Microsoft? Or was it 16,000? Or 1,900, sorry. And it was like, oh my God, they're awful. You know, all them people. And, you know, Microsoft compared to Sony, you know, much bigger outfit, stuff like that, much more, you know, more teams, stuff like that. They were saying about the Activision, a lot of that was already queued up, ready to go anyway, you know, and stuff like that. It's just shit, but it happens, you know what I mean? And, you know, like everyone holding flowers and going, oh, you know, like it seems to be the nature of the beast, you know what I mean? You either get work or you don't get work, you know, and yeah. So I don't know if that's poignant or not, but that's kind of my take on the whole thing.
It was deep. I've just seen Patrick in chat as well. Patrick's our fledgling developer friend who's working on games on his own, but he's trying to get into the industry as well. For people trying to get into the industry right now, it's got to be a bit of an awakening, hasn't it? The industry, like I said earlier, the industry has always been pretty unstable as work goes, but it's something that the obvious advantage of it is that making games is cool as fuck and people want to do it, which makes you all the more disposable and expendable, I suppose.
And with Patrick as well, like if you've got the hunger, I'm not saying that people don't have the hunger and words get taken out of context, but what I'm saying is he's new going in, yeah, so it's all fresh to him, you know what I mean? And it's not like everyone gets laid off, you know what I mean? You don't know, these might just be support people that were drafted in and stuff like that, but if you can bed yourself in, like there's clearly careers. I mean, we look at the layoffs numbers like as if like you said 8% or something like that. You know, it's still a single figure percent. All right, it's a lot. Yeah, but I'm saying there's still a lot of people in work. Yeah, so it does look like if you're going to analyse this industry and go, oh my God, people getting laid off left and right, go and watch the construction industry, go and watch any other industry. Layoffs are just a part of, you know, work. You know what I mean? Especially contractual work. You know what I mean? It happens all the time. So don't be too discouraged, Patrick, because you're all right, mate.
It'll stabilise. Recruitment will happen again, and end result, if it does work out, you get to do something really cool. So I'm still encouraging you, Patrick. I still want to play the game that you keep talking about, where I get to burn everyone and then fire demons haunt me. All of this kind of stuff. That's my kind of thing. It's optional, but it's exactly what I would do. So
I think sometimes in these cycles, sorry, I was just going to say, I think sometimes
Okay.
in these cycles as well is that it can give birth to kind of new studios. But sometimes, and I'm not saying that's definitely going to happen. I think it will happen with some individuals, but obviously there's not as much capital and investment money floating around at the moment. People are being a bit cagey with it. But Studio Liverpool kind of shut, and it birthed like 3 or 4 different studios. Obviously, Evolution Studios shut, Bizarre Creations shut, and studios have kind of come off the back of these. So hopefully, those who have got decent enough connections and obviously they're willing to start something themselves will do. And then other studios will pick other talented individuals. The other side of things as well, which we obviously don't get the knowledge and privy to. I know for a fact that Sony will be obviously trying to work through the people who may want to leave or a change of scenery or something first. Obviously, that's different for London, which has just been closed completely. But they have in the past, reached out to other studios, recruiters, brought companies in to help people potentially relocate within the industry and stuff. Because the one killer in these scenarios is that if we lose talent out of the industry because they're kind of fed up or they're they're obviously disillusioned with what's going on, then you start losing them into different sectors, and that's a real shame if some of those individuals are really, really talented.
Yeah, and that's a running risk that it happens a lot. You hear it all the time. Like you, right? You used to do game development and you left. What drove you to stay away from it?
Yeah, I think it's hard. I think, like you said, it's it's cool as fuck, and I think the perception is cool as fuck. But it's kind of difficult. So me in kind of a game design role and senior and lead positions, I'd say 80% of it is like documentation and managing a team and so on and so forth, and a smaller percentage is actually creating. It depends what game you're working on, but balancing, getting UI UX processes right, getting certain gameplay loops right, and things like that. But it's a hell of a lot of documentation, and the other thing as well, if you're a gamer, it's really difficult to develop games because obviously you kind of start to lose that enjoyment of finding a game, for the first time, because obviously you may develop a game back to front. You might complete the ending of a game and then start to work on the beginning and so on and so forth. And then you just inevitably start playing games from a developer's perspective. So you can't start looking out for stuff. You start going, have they done this? Have they done that? So for me, it was, that kind of 15-year period. I did a bit of consultancy, kind of, helped a few people kind of start a few like studios or get back into some concepts and ideas, and then I had kind of offers from Ubisoft and EA and other places in Canada, but just didn't want to kind of relocate and get back in the industry. I just decided to look elsewhere within technology. But weirdly enough, is like the journey that I'm on now. When that journey completes, I do want to get back into game development, but from a kind of independent perspective, and hopefully not be beholden to a really big publisher that's kind of like calling the shots. Obviously, you will more than likely end up with a publisher unless we do some Kickstarter stuff or early access gaming or something like that. But so I do kind of miss it and want to get back into it. It's just tough at the moment.
Like, complete aside, you mentioned running teams in a senior position at a studio, and I saw John Carmack talking today. He was referring to there's a general conversation going on about the need to be a programmer, or the importance of programming within game development going forwards, as AI can potentially take some of the strain on that. And he said something interesting. He was saying he agrees with that trend. He doesn't think programming is necessarily that important to game development, but he's obviously a legendary programmer. So he's speaking from quite a unique perspective, saying, like, this isn't the ultimate skill set. Problem solving is the ultimate skill set. And then he said for himself, he's recognized and acknowledged that he will never make the step up from that. To him, the step up from where he is to think that there's a step up from John Carmack is to manage other people and get them to do this work for you. So he was saying he's not that character. He's not a people manager, so he's never going to elevate to that position. And for him personally, he would fancy his chances better at managing AI. That isn't really like a topic or conversation point. It's just quite interesting to read because it's John Carmack saying this stuff. So,
yeah, I think, and you know what? When people ask me about getting into games or getting into game industry and stuff, first thing I do is tell them to learn Unreal Engine or start to become a level designer or build environments and stuff, because I think if you've got that kind of skill set where you can really build and lay out a level which has got multiple like egress routes and stuff, then that's the element. I'm not saying that AI wouldn't be able to kind of find some of those paths and that in the future, but you'd still need a really good, competent level designer to kind of think on multi-layers, multi-directional, you know, and really start to kind of build based on the environment. So I always tell people to try and jump into Unreal Engine, start just building small environments, and play around with those kind of areas and start thinking about level design. But yeah, in terms of, for me, and I know what John Carmack's on about, obviously I would probably build a studio and become like the studio manager. And obviously the last 11, 12 years of being a CEO of a business, there's more. I would bring a lot of that to the table in terms of managing investment, you know, building the team out. I've still got some great game ideas which I want to kind of build, and we can start to put people onto those. But yeah, it would be, I think, gone are the days where I get proper into the nitty gritty of actual game design mechanics and things like that. But it's about pulling that team together. But I think he's got a point in terms of certain parts of it just being you know, carried out by AI. But I think those kind of environment level design and things like that is where I've been telling people to really get into and build a portfolio with Unreal.
Yeah, which ways into the industry are obviously changing over time as capabilities and engines do evolve. But Fortnite seems to be well positioned to raise a generation into actually like the necessary skill set, with its basically got the whole of the Unreal Engine editor packed into Fortnite if you want to go that route. Fun times. On the Sony closures, not to bring it back down again, but Firesprite and the London studio had specific skill sets. So earlier on this week, there was a PlayStation blog post about their PSVR 2 headset, saying here's like a few games, third-party games that are in the pipeline, and also we're working on making this thing compatible with PCs, so you can expand your library and play PC games on your PSVR 2 headset. Obviously, on the surface, that's good news for people that have got it, because it's just giving you more options and more compatibility. It's enhancing what the device can do. My immediate response when I saw that news was, like, this is a soft exit. They are essentially saying that they're not going to make games for this thing, which has been the concern on PSVR 2 for a little while for me, is Sony have never shown the promise or commitment from a first-party perspective. They've never committed any kind of roadmap or said that they're going to deliver any games for it. That seems to have played out now that they're getting rid of their own internal VR studios. Darge, I know you love the virtual reality. What's going on with PSVR 2? Would you recommend your best friends go and buy it?
I wouldn't know, because I wouldn't touch it. But I just don't VR. You know, it's not a PlayStation thing. It's I don't know. They had the last niche headset, and then they did their really good marketing thing of going, no, this is the one. Like, this is the one, and we're gonna, you know, fully build it out. And clearly, there was no uptake on it, was there? And I think they've kind of just looked at it and gone, this ain't worth the time. You know, they can sell the headset to the PC community if they choose to use that headset with the compatibility and stuff like that. But like you say, for you as a VR enthusiast, you would like them to flesh out their own first-party software, right? And they're basically going, nah, we ain't gonna do it, because clearly for Sony, it's not there for them. It's not. If it was there for them, Like they clearly they would do it. I mean, Helldivers 2, for example, you know, that was the guinea pig that they put out there, and they must be loving the results, and they must be like, this is something we can invest in. Like we can show this to shareholders and go, look, this is the thing, you know, and VR just clearly weren't it, you know, and yeah, it's a shame for, like I say, people like yourself and all VR enthusiasts, you know, people enjoy it, but yeah, it's, you know,
Darge, everyone is a VR enthusiast. They just haven't all got there yet. It's a shame for all of your futures.
I mean, yeah, I'm sure it's good, but like I said to you, it's just not. It's not me, you know, paying the extra to own the console and then pay for the headset on top of that, and it's just like, nah, not for me. But yeah, all right, it's a killer for everyone else.
Chris, you are less repulsed by the virtual reality headsets. You had a Quest 2. I don't know if you got the 3 or not. I can't remember. But did you ever get to try the PSVR 2?
Yes, so I've tried it in a couple of friends. I think I think the quality is decent. I think the comfort is decent. I think it's nicely weighted, kind of across the head, and obviously, as you know, I struggle with kind of motion sickness in VR,
Yeah.
but obviously, I need to jump back on it and just pop a load of travel sickness pills and see if that helps. Which I believe it helps with you, or it helped you find your VR legs at one point. I think, obviously, as we know, due to the news, they're definitely kind of moving and looking at how that can be supported on PC. I think there's a lot of investments got into it, and other than enthusiasts, I think it's quite hard to get a kind of casual adoption across the board. Obviously, let alone when it's priced at 500 plus quid and stuff like that. I think just on Firesprite, obviously they were a VR studio, but weirdly, obviously born out of Studio Liverpool and Evo and essentially racing studios, or studios that have developed Wipeout and so on and so forth. Obviously, we now know that Twisted Metal Games as a Service has been canned, and that was something that they were working on, which I can see why they were utilizing that studio away from VR to work on that, because absolutely incredible loads of talent when it comes to car handling and so on and so forth. So I think there's I think it's easier to kind of focus on the studios that you kind of last expanded, and I think if they've turned around and de-scoped a lot of work and a lot of projects, then I'm not saying I obviously condone this, but from a business perspective, it would make absolute sense that Japan, and it's largely what happened with Studio Liverpool, is Japan turned around and said, well, what are Studio Liverpool working on? What have they got in the release cycle in the next 3 to 4 years? And where do we go from there? And we had nothing in the release cycle. We were working on a load of concepts which weren't getting greenlit, whilst other studios were building titles that were being released. So we rightfully so at the time, got the axe because we hadn't pushed anything through into the market. And unfortunately, it'll just be as black and white as that. They'll just look at the studios and go, where have we ramped up? What have we got in the release cycle? Have we greenlit anything? No, we haven't. And we can't just concept forever and a day. And unfortunately, that's how the board kind of look at these things. Whether there's like an interlocking in Sindri, does this mean PSVR 2 is dead? Does it mean they're going in a different direction? Obviously, they're looking at PC gaming. Are they actually going to try and shift units and say, utilize our headset instead of a Quest or something else? Because we've got really high quality. We've got a high quality product that works, that can work quite nicely. We've got some technologies in there that work really well. I guess we'll find out in the coming months.
It's difficult. Because like the PSVR 2 when it came out, I would have said would have been a pretty good PC VR headset. It is a decent headset. It's proper VR. The PSVR 1 kind of wasn't. It had a lot of drawbacks and a lot of flaws that made it quite nasty to use. But the second one is actually good besides having a cable. The problem is that since it came out, the Quest 3 came out. So at this point in time, if you're looking for a PC VR headset, it's already not actually that competitive in its price range. So I don't think this is going to rescue it by any stretch of the imagination. I'll be very surprised if we see a PSVR 3 as an immediate successor. Maybe one day in the future if VR takes off elsewhere, but I don't imagine that Sony are investing in bringing this thing forwards now. And I couldn't recommend people go and buy that headset, which is unfortunate because Twisted Metal should have been a VR game. It should have been both. You should have been able to play that on a screen and in VR. Sony should have been supporting this thing. The people that have gone and bought it should have things to look forwards to. And I guess it is some compensation that they are making it work on PC as well. So they could have just ditched it completely like they've done various other bits of hardware, just said, well, this isn't working out. Not a lot we can do about that now, sorry. But they are at least making that little extra step to keep that support going and give you more options for some people. Third parties are still going to support it a bit. It does have some audience. There are still some games in the pipeline. But overall, for VR enthusiasts, which is all of us, but mostly me, it's not great news. It does, though, kind of move into another topic that's been doing the rounds. There's lots and lots of discourse at the moment around whether exclusive games are good for the industry, good for the consumer, or whether they're the devil's work and anti-consumer. And I think VR is a good way to open up a different perspective on it, because it's very easy to look at the industry in the console space and go think of exclusives from that perspective. There's 50 million PlayStations out there. Are they being arses by not sharing their games around? Are Microsoft being arses by not sharing their game around? But one of the most prevalent plus sides of exclusives is when a manufacturer or platform holder puts a product out, they do have some burden to get software up and running on that platform. And that's for me where exclusives do matter, and where I would have liked to have seen. I would not have begrudged Sony or Meta or anyone else throwing money at making a VR game. So when you scale it up to the console space, I always say that I don't particularly like exclusives in that space. They're not good for me. They don't help me. The fact that I need to buy a PlayStation if I want to play God of War is not a benefit to me as a consumer. It's a £450 deficit. I don't want to have to do that if I don't have to. But there's different angles to it. Darge, have you been watching the conversations around exclusivity? What's your broad opinion on whether it's good or bad?
Exclusives. Like I said, in the ideal world, like what you just said there, everyone can just have everything where they want to play. You want to be pro-consumer. Let the consumer make one purchase and never have to worry about anything else. But obviously, it don't work like that. You know what I mean? Like you got two companies, particularly in Microsoft, in Xbox. So I keep saying Microsoft, in Xbox and PlayStation, who they want to sell as many of their consoles as possible. And how do you do that? You need to have something that the others don't. That's why they do these third-party partnerships, like console exclusive, Final Fantasy VII, a remake, all these things. This is how you sell stuff. I don't agree with it, but I also don't hate it. Do you know what I mean? Like you say, with the VR space as well, like it would have thrived, having a form of exclusive as well, like, the hardware and stuff like that. But clearly there just weren't enough going on for Sony to move the needle, like you said on that. I'll just jump back on that bit you said just a minute ago about it is good that they're supporting the PC now. Well, we don't know how many headsets they're sitting on. They might not have sold many this last couple of months, and they're like, we need to just sell these now to whoever wants them, But yeah, the exclusives thing, I mean, it does matter, like you say, even regardless of last week's news with the 4 Xbox games, the 4, I'll say old Xbox games, and people go, 5 Rush, but, it's been a year. You'd have either played that game by now if you genuinely were interested. If you haven't played it, you've just got fake interest in the game. Like they're going to go elsewhere, but I still think like that, these people going like, Xbox are giving up. Like, They're not, because if they were giving up, Fable would be day one on PlayStation. Indiana Jones will be day one. I'm not saying they're never going to go over there because they're going to take your money, however, but they'll still be exclusive to the ecosystem, 12, 18 months, 2 years, whatever, because they still want people to come in, so they do matter. The exclusives 100% do matter, but I don't really care about them personally. But that's my opinion.
What about you? And obviously this ties into the conversations we had around the Xbox stuff, and I don't want to totally rehash things that we've already said, but generally, the notion of... No, I'm not going to go at you, Darge. That was good. I completely forgot that we'd had this little chat about it. Suddenly I was like, oh no, we're getting back into last week's topic. I didn't mean for that. But broadly, Chris, do you think exclusives are a consumer-friendly direction, or is it corporate greed? How should we feel about it?
I think it's one of those exclusives have just been part and parcel of the industry. Nintendo have their exclusives, Sony do, Xbox do. I think what those kind of organizations, with the exception of Nintendo perhaps, but what certainly Sony and Xbox are kind of looking at now is going, Xbox have done this years ago, so it's slightly different. We've got a large audience on PC. People are not necessarily going out and buying our consoles anymore. Obviously, some people are, but other people have got a PC. People are spending money on upgrading that PC or buying a decent enough rig. I think not every PC gamer out there is playing 4K 60 or 4K 120. There's a lot of PC gamers out there at 1440p. There's still PC gamers out there at 1080p, super high frame rates. On real kind of shit hot monitors that are doing 320 hertz and stuff like that, and being super competitive. And I think the angle that not a lot of people have thought about in terms of, when I say not a lot of people, I don't mean you or any of us on here, but like the general consensus on social media is that the angle which I see with PSVR 2 going to PC is Sony are starting to think about porting Sony exclusive VR games to PC.
I want them to do that with Gran Turismo.
So I can see that happening, and obviously, if someone wants to bookmark me comments or whatever they can, because I see it being a high likely percentage of, because we know that PC gamers are engaged far more in VR, whether they're using it for kind of flight sims, whether they're using it for racing games, for that kind of authentic, sim experience, whether they're using it for standalone products. So with Sony, they've purchased kind of PC porting studios, and everyone just assumes, because that's what's happened, oh, it's God of War to PC, or it's The Last of Us, or it's going to be, Uncharted, and so on and so forth. But there's a whole catalogue of VR games which could be ported over to PC. I'm sure Sony are looking at going, actually, the VR uptake on PC is a lot higher. There's people kind of sit there with a dedicated setup and they'll have the headset on, and the kind of cable is less of an issue because they're, relatively static and so on and so forth. And obviously Herman came out and said, we're now going to be putting our products, kind of day and date on PC and mobile. He's not talking about Xbox. He's not talking... or he's not going to talk about Xbox at the moment. So people going, oh, well, PlayStation games are never going to come to Xbox. But if PlayStation games go to PC, you bet your bottom dollar they're running on a Microsoft Windows machine, more than likely. They're being passed through Steam. Sony may even end up looking at some type of store or some type of PC subscription service. There's a whole host of ways where they can kind of spin this exclusivity in a better light and say, actually, we want to reach the hundreds of millions of PC players. We want a different audience. Herman's talking about mobile. What does that mean for Sony? Does that mean companion apps and stuff supporting existing games and exclusives, or does it mean exclusive content and so on and so forth? Like obviously Microsoft have with King. So I think, for me, that's the angle of PSVR. I don't think they've just got a load of headsets that they want to kind of get rid of. I think they've probably got a load of headsets that they want to get rid of, like Darge is saying. But I mean, that's not just the single tactic. I think they will bring a catalogue over with them and say, actually, you can't play these on Quest, as good as that headset is. Buy a PSVR, they might lower the price slightly, and they might get people into kind of PlayStation's world of VR.
So you reckon potentially if they were to move over like Call of the Mountain or Gran Turismo or something like that, you reckon there's a chance that they would say it works in PC VR but only with our headset and not with a Quest?
Well, I wasn't necessarily going down that route, but yeah, if you were Sony and you wanted to kind of sell those units and stuff, then yeah potentially. And there's obviously
probably not. I want to use it with my Quest.
Well, for you, I'd say no. They're going to allow it to work with all headsets. For those people who will only die by the sword of a Sony product, then it'll only work on a PSVR 2.
But you could see that though. What Chris just saying there, like I agree with that. I could see, like it being headset exclusive. Just to test it. Like they're treading new waters. They're going to poke the bear and see what they can get away with. And obviously, as we all know, the PC community is one that you don't really get away with a lot. So they might try that tactic at the start. But I don't know whether it'll work for them or not. But like I said, they could be sitting on a lot of headsets still, and they're going to try and get them out of the door. One way or the other.
I mean, you can turn around to Meta and so if I was Herman or if I was someone at Sony, you'd be having those conversations with Meta and saying, what does it look like if we bring our games to VR and start supporting your headset? And it might be a bit of PSVR 2 first, then Meta, but there's certainly conversations that I'd be having as Sony to say, actually, let's latch and tap into that kind of customer base without kind of alienating the PC VR community too much.
Yeah, and I didn't actually mean to keep this on VR because I know a lot of people don't care for it, but a lot of the VR space on PC is like open XR and open standards for it. So typically, if Sony want the Steam library of games essentially to work on their headset, it would be quite difficult for them not to support those standards on their own games as well, I think. So that's kind of a positive if they do choose to go that direction, which obviously I hope that they do. Generally, when you're talking about exclusives there, Chris, I'm glad you mentioned that it's something that we're all just kind of used to in the gaming space, because it is a status quo situation where in the past there were a lot more differences in hardware and exclusives probably made a lot more sense from a technical level than they do today. Generally, the problem with the discourse on Twitter is, as it always is, everybody has an opinion that's one extreme or the other. Like either all exclusives are always bad, or everything should be everywhere all the time, and there's no grey area in between. There's no nuance at all. It's just like social media arguing. So it's very, very tiring because there's always exceptions and grey area in the middle of pretty much everything. So that's that. Let's talk about, and this is, we could talk about this for 17 hours or for a very short while. I'm not sure how it's going to go, but I want to talk about reviews for games, because there were some conversations that came up around Helldivers in particular, with its server issues and how you should review a game like that. And then it opens into like, how do you review a live service game in general? How do you review a multiplayer only game in general? How do you review Helldivers 2 on a scale of like 1 to 10, 1 to 100, whatever it may be, against something like Final Fantasy VII Rebirth? I'm going to start with you, Darge, because you look like you need the toilet or something, like you're ready to go, and I'm going to keep you here. You look poised and ready to jump off your chair.
I left my Red Bulls in the fridge, and I'm like, oh, shall I just fucking run and get them? But I will. I'll get them after I've spoken, because I'm a little bit dry mouth.
So,
yeah, that's all right, mate.
Tell me all about like the current state of reviews for the gaming industry. Are they valuable? Do you look at any in particular? What makes them worthwhile or not?
So, I don't really think I think there's been, like, for the last 4 or 5 years, I think there's been so many instances of, like, it's Jekyll. There's like, you've got some really hot takes, really bad takes, and poor scoring, and this, that, and the other. Like, it's just been really inconsistent, across the board. For me, and someone who you and me are both a big fan of is ACG. And when you said about, is there anyone who you sort of pay attention to, like, he's the one like who, and it's because of the way that how he scores a game. He doesn't numerically do it on a chart or anything like that. He'll just say, get it day one, wait for a sale, or don't touch it. And that's the truth. Or if it's a game like a live service one, he'll say wait for a few patches, you know, because it's in a bit of a 2 and 8 and this, that, and the other. So I don't really pay attention to reviews anymore. You know what I mean? I found that you make your own mind up with games. You know what I mean? I think if you're paying too much attention to the clickbaiting, you know, like what we're in now, which is, you know, Final Fantasy, you know, is probably going to just be, I don't know if they even, I think they have dropped the scores for it, and it's like 9s and all that across the board or whatever. But all these outlets are going to say, what can we do to make ours stand out? And that's what they do, you know, and it's all misleading. I just don't care about reviews, personally. Like, unless it's from people, like I said to you, if you was to do a review, like, and this ain't me licking your ass, this is me keeping it straight, yeah? It would be the same with Chris or someone like that, yeah? Yeah, no, but you know what I mean. Like, I'm not physically licking your ass, I wouldn't do that. But anyway... kissing your ass. But anyway, I would listen to your opinion on a game. Yeah,
you're getting clipped, Darge.
Oh, clip Tony will have that clip. Tony will have that on loop on his phone for the rest of the evening and be watching that with pleasure. But anyway, yeah. So like, if it's certain personalities, like a journalist who I don't know their back record. Like I say, Metro UK, the newspaper, the free newspaper that they give out on the train in London, is an accredited. You know, they're even on the voting panel for the VGAs. You know what I mean? And I don't even know who's scoring that for them. You know what I mean? So, for me personally, if I was ever going to pay an interest on a review, it would be from someone who I know or respect their opinions on things. You know what I mean? Like, if you tell me, nah, that game's shit, I ain't gonna go, hey, he's just trolling. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, it is what it is. So, yeah, I don't really care. You know, the days of Metascore celebrating are long gone for me. It might be because I decided to be an Xbox guy for a few years and I didn't really have a lot to shout about, you know what I mean? But, yeah, I don't really care. So, make some reviews, Asa, and then I'll care a bit more.
I'm going to make some reviews, Darge, and they're going to have scores on them in the special way that I do, because I have opinions on how games can and should be scored as well, and it is very difficult. Go and get your Red Bull. Chris,
Wait.
You tell me what guides your decision to purchase or not purchase a game, and what you think of the state of reviews across the industry.
I mean, to be fair, for me, it's more word of mouth. So it's, you know, it's friends. It's kind of, you know, you recommending something, work colleagues recommending something, you know, my brother. I think I've got more respect for those kind of recommendations. I think the other thing as well is, like, most gamers know what they like. So if you like a kind of games as a service, as long as it's not terribly broken, odds are you're going to kind of dive in, give it a go, and make your own mind up. If you like a really kind of epic, story-driven, single player, you know, blockbuster, odds are you're going to give it a go, or you've been waiting for it. So I tend to kind of know what I like, and if I see something which has got, you know, a nice kind of, you know, topic, or, you know, it's a really good kind of interesting backstory and things like that, I'll give it a go. So I downloaded Enshrouded the other day because you mentioned it, jumped into Darge's game for a bit on your server, and was like, oh, actually, once I want to give this a bit of time, and I could tell already that it was the type of game I like, you know, a bit of a survival game, you know, building some stuff, even though Darge was having a mare building stuff with little tiny boxes, and then realised that there was like a blueprint system or something like that.
It's fucking ridiculous.
It's part and parcel of, like, discovering some of these games. I think Meta, you know, Metacritic and OpenCritic, and so I think they just need to be, like, burnt, because I think there's just a bit too much, like, cloud chasing, as Darge was saying. Like, you've got Metro, or you have the publications that'll give a really terrible like hot take because they'll appear at the top of the list with like the most negative score, or they'll appear, so I think it starts becoming kind of political and tactical and things like that. And then you've got publications which have just got a ridiculous bias. And I think reviews were really different when, show me age here, but like before, a solid, decent internet, and you had to kind of buy your PC Gamer or your kind of review magazine every week, a month, to find out, what a GTA scored and things like that. I think that's slightly different. You would give it a lot of your time, a lot of effort, a lot of energy, and then I think journalists in them days were just really good journalists. They would go out of the way. They would get kind of things a lot earlier before people could play them. The writing was really good. They kind of understood what made a decent game. And I'm not saying all journalists now are terrible. But like Darge said, there's some people where you're like, who's wrote that article? And we even get reviews where someone goes, yeah, it's a shit game this. Oh, by the way, I hate RTSs. And it's like, well, why have you been put on an RTS game?
Yeah.
Like, I wouldn't review a Final Fantasy game because they're just not my game. I understand why people love them, but they're just not for me. Say, like JRPGs, stuff like that. So you would just not stick me on any of those games because I'd be bored and just go, yeah, this is crap. And someone would go, it's a masterpiece or whatever, which I know it will be for people. So there's a few hot takes like that where the wrong people are reviewing the wrong game, in my opinion, as well.
I think just cutting in quickly, like Asa, sorry to butt in, mate, but
okay.
This is my personal preference. So if people want to come at me at Darge Knight on Twitter. But at one time when I lost all respect, like with regards to reviewing as well, was the Hogwarts Legacy thing. And I know it's a hot topic and stuff like that. But there were outlets giving that game a 4. Yeah. And that game has outsold a Call of Duty or whatever the other fucking game, Feet or whatever the game was. Like it had a great year, and
all the games.
the general consensus by gamers was it was a really good game, a really good Harry Potter game. But because of the original author of the Harry Potter, there was a big big charge movement of hate the game, hate the game. At the end of the day, the developers have grafted on that, and I think it deserved a little bit of, put that to one side. Let's just review this game as the product that it is. Don't worry about all the other stuff, but we see it getting raked through the coals and this, that and the other. And I'm kind of glad that game had the success that it did and managed to break the monotony of review scores matter, because they didn't matter for that game, and that's when I stopped paying attention completely, I think. And I still ain't played the game either.
Yeah.
It's a brilliant game. I mean, it's a good point. It's like a brilliant game, and obviously just as a little snippet of knowledge or whatever, that studio, the guy basically in charge of that game wanted to build a kind of light RPG, wizarding world type game. So it was never meant to be Harry Potter. It was only when the ability to kind of utilize the Harry Potter license come into action, and then they started to kind of make it in the kind of Hogwarts world, is how it came about, really. But it's a great game, really good combat. I mean, if the combat felt closer to Batman, the original Batman games, Arkham and stuff like that, then some of the other spin-offs and things like that. Obviously, you had a wand and you were kind of firing stuff, but the kind of blocking mechanics, the relock it on, using environmental objects and stuff like that. So, yeah, great game and some really nice kind of leveling up and your abilities and so on and so forth. But again, you're right, Darge, in terms of all these kind of bad reviews and hot takes and stuff like that. At the end of the day, it was Harry Potter, and millions of people still bought the thing.
Yeah, you can tell there definitely was some refusal to cover it, because I just put the accolades trailer up, and while it was playing, I was thinking, this slightly undermines what you're saying, because it's got a whole load of quotes of people loving the game, official reviews and stuff. But then it said it's a really good game. Sports Illustrated, and that's when you realize, yeah, it really didn't get that much coverage, did it? If that's made the accolades trailer. Yeah, so fair point. I think generally though, I actually think review scores should matter and do matter and are an important metric. I think the way that they are portrayed at the moment, one of the things that you said is you want to see consistency. I think to some extent we see too much consistency in that everything is between a 7 and a 9, which is pretty damn consistent. But I get what you mean in terms of you don't want fanboy rags and all the rest of it. But reviews in general, there are so many games at the moment. Some of them are 70 quid or 70 monies if you're elsewhere. And so little time. So you've got games that are on Game Pass, it's really easy. If they're on PlayStation Plus, Game Pass, whatever other subscription service, it's very easy to say, well, if I like the look of it, I like the story or whatever, I'm going to go and try it and I'm going to decide for myself. But broadly, outside of that, consumers need a guiding light. They need to know what's worth playing and what's not. And you've got word of mouth and you've got marketing campaigns. But it sure would be nice if there were reviews you could count on. And everybody's got their own. They've got their favourites. And I'm always interested in finding out who these people are and who's recommended. I always mention ACG. And ACG doesn't have any scoring. But scoring is still the easiest, like at a glance indicator of what a game has to offer. Which is why when I do reviews, and I've only got 4 on the channel so far, but intent to do more, I always try and score them. But I don't feel that you can score Hades against Hogwarts Legacy. Hades is like a perfect game to me. But or Horizon Forbidden West, right? Phenomenal game. Huge in scale and scope. Definitely has more flaws than Hades. But to give it a lower score is just it isn't the recognition that it deserves. It doesn't acknowledge what these big games are doing well. And that's why when I am reviewing them, I break my review down into like a letter grade that kind of indicates the scope and ambition of the project. And then the number is how well they executed on what they were trying to do. But there's loads of scenarios that are really, really difficult to quantify in current review scales. And one of them that I go back to as an example is if you've got like, what's the game you really like, Chris?
Red Dead Redemption 2.
That kind of did have a multiplayer, so that's a little bit tricky. I was thinking, typically, if you have a Red Dead Redemption 2, though, right, and you're going to give it, what, like a 10 out of 10?
Mm-hmm.
You love that game, right? It's perfect. Then you have a multiplayer component that's riddled with flaws, and let's just assume that it was worse than it was. How should that impact the review score? Should you acknowledge those flaws and take the score down? Do you leave it at 10? Like, what's the correct way to approach a review?
Yeah, I think like your methods, I think if you can break down a product into its core components, and obviously GTA and Red Dead Redemption slightly different because obviously Rockstar wanted to create that online universe, and Red Dead Redemption Online was completely and utterly flawed. It obviously released at a later date, but it was just a hot mess. And obviously me and a mate of mine made it a hot mess for a lot of people because you could literally stand on the first cottage or like sheriff's station, and as people would approach it to launch the mission, you could just headshot them, and they would like respawn back at the beginning, and then and no one could get into that area to launch the mission. So obviously there was certain aspects which were just broken, but I think the way you kind of break things down, I think if you break down a game in its own right on its kind of individual components and then give them a score for each of those areas, so whether it's scope or it could be a multiplayer option or so on and so forth. It's like Helldivers. So you can't score that as a game as a service against something which has got PvP when Helldivers is never going to have PvP, and he came out and said it's a PvE game, it's a cooperative game. So how does someone score that? Ignore the kind of server issues. How does someone score that against another games as a service where you can actually go into areas and take out other players and so on and so forth? So I think there needs to be some type of breakdown.
Like for like, which makes it really, really difficult because when you just got this singular scale that's supposed to cover all. And I'm not saying that my system is perfect because it's not. There are definitely scenarios that challenge the way that I've got it set up, and there always will be because games are massive and complex and diverse. So there isn't like a perfect framework to review every game consistently and fairly in a way that makes sense. But the industry at large at the moment just does not do a good job of covering games, for my mind. And one thing that I also find, go on.
No, sorry, I was just going to quickly say the way, and obviously this is a PC centric thing. The way I choose a game, so I know what genre and what kind of largely what scenario I want to play and so on and so forth. I think the best method out there is Steam. And you go in, and I think if you find that something is overwhelmingly positive, it's got the kind of all-time score, it's got the kind of most recent. And me personally, I tend to find if both of those are overwhelmingly positive or highly positive or whatever, it tends to be a really good game. And I think if you have one which is like overwhelmingly positive, but it's got like mixed reviews in its more recent state, then you know there's some like broken elements or they've released an update or so on and so forth. So I think, and a lot of people don't like Steam, and but a lot of PC gamers do and utilize it as their kind of one store. I think that, and it's not a review site, but it kind of is. I think that works really well. But you've obviously got a massive snapshot rather than a snapshot of a load of journalists going, "Oh, let's knock the score down," and so on and so forth. And ignore the people who'll just like downvote something because it's being made by someone they don't like. It tends to be, if those two metrics line up, overwhelmingly positive, or it tends to be a decent game. Excuse me.
I think as well, just on that point, but I think we kind of answered the question. So to a degree, the numeric system just ain't it. You know what I mean? But like what Asa's ACG obviously does it his way. So when you said earlier about how can you compare one against the other if you think they're both brilliant at what they do, well, you simplify it and just go, they're great. They're great games. Give it a great, excellent or something, for example, because it's excellent in its field at what it tries to achieve. And then like what Chris was just saying then about the Steam. If you look at Steam and it says, overwhelmingly positive, then you can take that as this game is overwhelmingly positively received to achieve what it is trying to do, But what we find is with the metrics is they're trying to stick a number on it and then it all gets misconstrued and, is this one a 7, but this is that, and da-da-da-da-da. I think, reviewing is just, it's just a mess. And I think there's a much simpler way of dealing with it instead of worrying about all the complications about pitting one against the other and this and that. Just take each game as it comes and give it a fair assessment, like you say, if it's an A to E or whatever it is. Just simplify it. But it's all been taken out of context, and like you say, what we touched on earlier, you can't really trust who's doing the reviews or the agendas behind it. It's just, I don't really pay it too much attention now,
There's also, you're right on all of that. I agree with that. There's also, I think, when you are reviewing games and when you are properly consuming someone's review of a game, it's a very difficult thing to decide how to weigh up flaws and positives. One of the things that you see a lot of is if a game is flawed, it's very easy to kind of, you start at a certain level and you start docking points for every flaw that you can find. So if you have a game that has certain things that you don't like, it's going to end up with a very low score, but it might do some things brilliantly well. And it's really difficult to kind of decide how you're going to, what your starting point is for a review, what makes it a certain number, how heavily you weigh the flaws versus the things that it does well. And I think oftentimes, even though the scores always end up in a 7 to 9 or whatever, oftentimes reviews focus a lot on what is wrong with the game without necessarily much appreciation of what is done well in a game, and that is a really difficult thing to balance.
But that's what gets you the traction or the clicks. If you go, everyone's really looking forward to Helldivers, but then there's a review that comes out going, buggy mess, and then everyone goes, hang on, everyone said this is really good, but this guy's saying it's bad. Do you know what I mean? I think the most important, if I was in the reviewing thing, if I was doing reviews, I would just make sure that I just give my honest opinion on the game, and you would hope that the audience that you garner align with your opinion on video games, and that's it. Like, do you know what I mean?
Part of it is innocent though. Part of it is like you're trying to be a critic, you're trying to be analytical, you're trying to make sure that you do note the things that are wrong with it, and it's easier to spot flaws than it is to recognize positives. I think things should work, and you kind of have that expectation, and the flaws you just kind of jot up and count. So I can see where it comes from and how flaws get so much weight in a review. And I'm not saying they should be completely disregarded and ignored. It's just reviewing games is very difficult. They are so broad, so diverse. There is so much that they can do, so much that they shoot to do, so much that they don't need to do. And it's really difficult to give any kind of consistent score on them. Speaking of reviews, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is reviewing really, really well. Chris, you don't care for Final Fantasy games, you've already said. Darge, I reckon you'd look good with Cloud Strife's hair.
I reckon I'd look good with a fucking homeless person's hair at the minute. I'll take any hair available. So anyone in the chat, if you've got some spare hair,
this is
send
okay.
it.
Don't panic.
Send it to me. But yeah, Final Fantasy. I
played
it. I played it originally on the PlayStation. I ain't gonna lie to you, I did enjoy it and I did beat it as well, but it was so bloody long and so long ago that I've forgotten. But do you know what? The remake come out and it was PlayStation exclusive, and obviously I weren't going to buy a PlayStation to play it, so I wasn't too bothered about it. But obviously I got a PC now, I still haven't got it. Good things, and then Rebirth's coming, and I feel like I'm going to end up having to play these games. I know that you've been a fan of them. I know you said that. I believe you said that Square Enix. I've got a bad record with Final Fantasy games, kind of not nailing everything, and then with 7's remake, they nailed it, and yeah, that's kind of like the common theme. But yeah, I'll be more interested to hear like your thoughts on it. You know what I mean? Because I'm still yet to dip my toes in.
You have to wait until at least next week. Generally, with Final Fantasy, though, you're right. I really liked the original, like the turn-based style Final Fantasy games from when I was a kid, and I saw firsthand the attempts to garner a bigger audience in the West, and the way that they changed Final Fantasy over time to make it less JRPG and more broad appeal. And it was, at first, it was like, oh, I don't like these changes, and then it got worse and worse and worse progressively over time with each iteration. So Final Fantasy 13 got a lot of criticism for not feeling like a Final Fantasy game and not being structured like a Final Fantasy game. And at the time, I was all on that. Didn't particularly like what they had done with it. But then Final Fantasy 15 happened, and I really, really didn't like that one. And I reckon if I went back to 13 now, I'd probably appreciate it a lot more. I pretty much lost all faith in Square Enix's ability to deliver a Final Fantasy game. And then they said they were doing 7 Remake, and this was concerning, because when you have something that you really, really liked, you don't want them to tarnish it with a terrible remake. You don't want them to turn your childhood, one of your favorite games, into what Final Fantasy 15 was. And I did not believe that they were capable of delivering that game well. Then it came out and it was freaking awesome to me. I adored that game. I don't know if it holds up as well for people that never played the original. I don't know if it's just nostalgia that kind of brings the value to it. So obviously I don't have that perspective because that's not me. I've got all of the nostalgia, and I played 7 Remake and adored it. So I'm absolutely getting Rebirth to play on Friday. I'm not playing a trailer for this one. Normally when we talk about games, I try and play a trailer. I don't want to see a trailer for this one because I don't really want to have the game opened up and spoiled, which may sound silly for a remake, but if you played part 1, then you know that it's not that silly.
They've almost spoiled it all anyway with how much of the game they've shown, and I mean they've shown
exactly it, which is why I don't watch it. Square Enix always do that. They don't know what to keep back. They're like, oh, we need to make sure everybody knows that this is a really exciting game, so we're going to show the massive plot twists in our trailer and whatever. And it's like, I'm right not watching that. Thanks.
I wouldn't even know what a spoiler was if I was watching the trailer. So.
Yeah,
I reckon if you watch some of their trailers, you'd be able to identify some things and go, oh, that probably shouldn't be in the trailer. I reckon you would, honestly. you'd be like, oh, that looks like a dramatic moment. I'm not sure that should be in the trailer. I think you'd pick some out. But yeah, so I can't really say much more about that because I've not played it until next week. So what we're going to do, unless there's any topics that I've skipped over and forgotten, we'll start to move on to the questions. Is there anything else that you wanted to bring up before we do that, Chris or Darge?
I just wanted to apologise. I thought when I turned my camera off, it'd just show my profile pic, but it obviously just zoomed in on Darge's head for some reason.
Do you know what?
It's a good
I've
head,
got
though.
a perfect layout for two people, but I couldn't remember what button to press in the heat of the moment. So panicked. It's fine.
In future, you will see a door open and I'll just leave and then come back in.
Yeah,
It's easier that way, but yeah.
Yeah, we'll learn from it.
Yeah.
Audio listeners, shut your faces. Nothing happened. No, sorry, audio listeners.
Yeah.
That was just a little bit of display messed up stuff. Nothing too serious. So, Darge, did you have anything topic-wise that you wanted to cover before we get onto our community questions?
Not really, mate. I mean, like I say, I'm surprised how quick it's gone this episode because I was spamming in the Discord like, what are the topics? You know, like obviously we knew about PlayStation, and yeah, we've managed to. We're getting a bit used to this now, aren't we? You know what I mean? But I haven't really got anything to add apart from. Hopefully, I'll play more Death Stranding this weekend, but that's about it for me.
How far do you
outro
think
time,
you're
Darge.
completing that?
How far do you know what? I mentioned it last night. I think I got something like 28 hours in Death Stranding. And then I sort of mentioned where I was, and then someone was like, yeah, you still got a way to go yet. And I was like, oh! And then like Dying Light 2 is another one that I kind of want to get back to, you know what I mean? But anyway, that's a conversation for another time.
My Baldur's Gate 3 party, all of us that play it, hit the level cap today, so must be getting to the end of that. If our characters are capped out, we must be getting to the end of that. It's going to open up so much opportunity for other games as well. That's exciting. What we're going to do then, it's not too late to add in if you want to, people that are watching, but our community questions, we've got our first one up already. Isla has asked, what did you think of the Pokemon Presents today? Nintendo, and then the question minimized, Nintendo better. Darge, you've watched the Pokemon
I actually
Presents today?
Because hang on before I get flamed. We was talking about what to watch, and we was talking about what to talk about, and then Isla kindly posted the Pokemon Presents clip into the thread, and I replied straight away, no. And then I was sat there waiting for people to reply, which didn't happen, and I just found myself click it and then sit there for the 12 minutes and watch it. I couldn't tell you a thing about it. But Pokemon's still a thing, and it's just still not appealing to me. But yeah, so yeah, I don't know. It's just not for me. It's a trading card game and a Pokemon Go. Are people still Pokemon going? People still getting hit by cars and that, walking out on roads and stuff?
Most of them died off from the being hit by cars, so that's faded a little bit. I saw the Pokemon Presents thing on the Discord, and I went to click it, and it said that it was 12 minutes, and I was like, that's too much Pokemon for me. This is kind of a little bit of a shame, but I've never played a Pokemon game. I do intend to play one within the course of the next year. Don't know which one, just one of them.
The old ones. Play the old ones.
You don't
I think the new ones are the same as the old ones.
Nah, the old Game Boy, like whatever they were, red, blue, and yellow, or whatever those were the colours. They were the first ones I played, and I'm quite happy to have left that there, and that's all I've played, and that's it now. I don't. Yeah, the old ones, the old retro ones are probably the ones for me.
Well,
Tony, you're a liar because you play Power World. So don't give me that I don't like enslaving animals. You play Power World, Tony. You ain't getting away with that in here, mate.
Agreed.
Well, actually, I've got a question for us very quickly. Are you guys going to join expedition? I can't type it. Are you guys going to join me on the expeditions, the Mud Runner game when that comes out? A little bit of co-op expeditions, helping each other up mountains and stuff.
Is that the truck one?
I had no plans to, but now that you said that, So have you played the other mud running games?
Yeah.
Is that the one we played?
Yeah, it's the one that we played, but we played in a carnage way.
Yeah, just sliding the arse out on the lorry and all that. Yeah, I remember.
But obviously,
so they take a lot of plotting and planning, right? I've never heard of it.
Yeah, so the original do. But I think what they've done is they've kind of encapsulated missions around like stories and stuff. So it's cooperative. You can kind of they've put some new kind of tools and things that you can utilize. So when me and Darge were playing like the original Mud Runners game, and you attach your kind of winch to trees and stuff. If there's no trees around, you're pretty much screwed. But obviously in expeditions, you can kind of plant bolted anchor points, and you can climb up like rocks. Pull yourself up kind of rock faces and things like that. And it's all about you can go kind of underground into like Inca. There we go. We've got the trailer coming on. You can go underground into kind of Inca trails and stuff like that. So looks really good. It looks like a nice little co-op experience. So just wondered if you guys were going to enter the fray with me.
Can't say no to you, Chris. I will absolutely give that a go. I don't know if it's my kind of game or not, to be fair, because it's it looks like it would be if I had a whole bunch of time to play everything. I'm not sure I'd prioritize it over other ones, but for the sake of playing it co-op with you, especially if they show me some rain in this trailer, if it starts like a bit of a thunderstorm.
There'll be rain.
There you go, rain.
There'll definitely be rain.
There's mud.
I can see there's rain in the mud, but there's a little light rain. I want a storm. I want it to be Pacific Drive.
Guarantee you there'll be rain. Like I was going to say, even though I only just briefly toyed with this game back then with Chris, like this sort of game is like if you do flight sim and you do a bush trip or something or whatever those trails are called, but you got a bit of time to kill. You want to do one of them. This is what this sort of game is. It's sort of like what it was. Very simmy, like with the you could get bogged into mud and then you'd have to winch yourself out of it and stuff like that. But yeah, you have like little trails in it, Chris, where you can just jump on for an hour. You got to kill, just run a couple of them. Like I say, we'll definitely do some of that. It'll be I'm sure it'll be funny. I think is this the one that someone was telling me Tony was playing it. I think Chronic in the Discord told me Tony was playing some truck game. Mate, is this out? Or has this just been...
No, it's out on like the 2nd of March, I think, or it could be... It's the first week of March, I think. It'll say at the end of the trailer. But obviously the original Mud Runner games is a bit more... It was a bit too much like a job. Where obviously this Expeditions is kind of, use a drone, take a picture of this historical item or whatever. You obviously hire people to kind of bolster your team and things like that. So it looks quite interesting, but even if it is just actually, should we do a quick expedition for half an hour, do a little bit of it, and then jump into
when you
something
say
else?
Co-op, will you be upset if I push you off a cliff?
You can try and push me off a cliff. I'll always have little anchor points.
Challenge accepted.
If you're going to push anyone off a cliff, that'd be me. I'll be the sacrificial lamb in that scenario always.
I mean, as long as there's no fire in it.
Yeah, fire and red barrels.
I do like
that
red
was my
barrel,
question. So sorry for hijacking the Q&A.
No, that's all good. The answer is yes. We're going to play that. It'll be streamed as well for people that are interested in the game. So, that'll be fun. Eradication has asked, any of the panel watched the Kojima documentary and thoughts on it? Has anyone watched that?
No, it's on the list for me to watch. I do want to watch it because I think he's got a tremendous mind.
Is he a prophet?
Prophet?
Does he see the future? That's one of the only glimpse. I've not seen the whole thing, but the only glimpse was someone that worked alongside him said that it was a little bit scary because he seems to be some kind of prophet. Like the stuff that he puts into games comes into fruition with an eerie degree of accuracy.
I'll wait until we all start having babies strapped to the fronts of our chests and fighting off rain monsters. But until that time comes, I'll be skeptical on the profiteering. But
I'm not waiting. I'm throwing bodily excrement at them already.
I'm not. I ain't gonna start lobbing my shit grenades at people and that. I ain't gonna. Kojima's never gonna get that one right. But
when I go to London, Darge straps me to the front of his chest and carries me around
Like in a baby hammock.
like a little pup. Delivers me to the train station.
I would never, until my recent Death Stranding escapades, I probably wouldn't have watched it. I mean, my Kojima love was Metal Gear 1 and 2. I never played 3, and I know it's a good one, so don't all start fucking going into one. But now, because of Death Stranding, like Chris has said there about his mind, and you know, when you look at that Death Stranding, I was one of the people mocking that game. When you're looking at that from the outside, like the baby in the jar, and it's just like, this guy is on some acid, like he's on some madness. But when you actually participate in the game, it's a good game. It's really good, you know what it does. So yeah, I've become a Kojima fan, replicant, who's around somewhere. Like he's a fan of him as well. I'm on board with OD. I'm on board with, you know, the next espionage tactical fucking game with PlayStation. You know, everything that you... Yeah, well, I'm gonna just put my hat in the ring now. I think DS2, Death Stranding 2, will be the first day and date PlayStation game that will go on both next year. I think, but it's not controversial. It's happening. Controversial is me saying I've got a lovely fucking long mohawk. Well, anyway, so yeah, no, I haven't watched it. I will watch it, and then when I watch it, who asked the question, Asa? Oh, it's gone now. Whoever asked it, I'll find out who you are.
Eradicated, wasn't it?
Oh, Eradication. Well, you're in the Discord. When I get round to it, mate, we'll have a little chat about it.
For those listening on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and all the rest of it, Darge does in fact have a huge mohawk. Episode 13 has asked, do you think that these layoffs coincide with the live service push and the potential failure of foam stars? Sony need that extra revenue as the Marvel franchises cost a huge amount. No. Next question. No. Episode 13. Foam Stars is not. Foam Stars, they wouldn't have paid a lot for that. It's a Square Enix game. They paid a little bit to put it on PlayStation Plus because, to be honest, they mostly paid marketing for that game, I would think. I don't think they paid very much money for it whatsoever. It needed a marketing push. Sony offered that to Square Enix. I have not seen the details of the contract, but I'd be surprised if there was a whole load of money in it. The extra revenue to pay for Marvel franchises, the whole point of them is that they pay for themselves. So yes, Marvel will take a huge amount of money for Sony being able to do Spider-Man, and there are quite heavy demands on what they get and how much of that money does go back to Marvel. But that's not a deficit. That's like of the money that they make by having it. Otherwise, they wouldn't be making Spider-Man games. Does it coincide with the live service push, though? I mean, we know that some of their live service games have been cancelled. We know that they are restructuring. So Herman Hulst did a follow-up talk about the restructuring and the layoffs, and he mentions that part of it is to be able to sustain their cinematic games, and part of it is a necessary restructure to be able to pursue mobile, cloud, and live service and all the rest of it. It coincides by virtue of the fact that it's happening at the same time, I suppose. But I wouldn't say like cause and effect. What about you, Chris? Anything on that?
I just think it'll coincide with a load of canned games. I think games are costing far more to develop nowadays. I think, weirdly, like Insomniac are the only ones who have been putting like consistent products out and probably holding kind of PlayStation aloft at the moment. So to see that studio kind of be hit is a bit unfortunate, especially when they're working on like Wolverine and obviously some other DLC. So it'd be quite interesting. I'd be quite interested to see who in Insomniac has been hit. Is it kind of, and I don't mean this in a disrespectful way, is it kind of like ancillary positions? So is it kind of like studio secretaries or studio managers or positions like that, or is it actually some of the kind of senior team? Is it people who have been actively involved in in the current kind of Spider-Man DLCs? Is it people who are involved in Wolverine? Is it people who are involved in Project Z or something else that has not really taken off? So
yeah,
I think
and we
it's
know
just
that that studio has
about
like a fairly packed, busy roadmap as well. So yeah, it would be interesting to see. But yeah, next question is from Saitama. What is I forgot to talk about Elden Ring. What is the best game ever made, and why is it Elden Ring? This was actually supposed to be one of the topics that I forgot to bring up. We've obviously spoken about it at various times, but are you two Elden Ring fans? Did we talk about this last week?
I'm not.
no.
I'm not a fan of Elden Ring or From Software games. I'm just shit at them, so I can't get involved in why that's the best game ever made, because the best game ever made for me was Pro Evolution Soccer 4 by Konami. I was an absolute freak on that game. You didn't matter who you were, you weren't beating me. So that's my answer. It's not going to be popular, but you know, it is what it is. But Elden Ring, I said in the Discord, in the voice chat with some of the boys the other day, I booted it up. I went into a cave and there was a big troll and I couldn't beat him. So I thought, I'll tell you what, I'll come back. So I went outside for a bit and then come across a lake, and just this gigantic dragon just fell out of the sky, one-tapped me and I was dead. And I just went, yeah, uninstall. Okay. You know, I'm like one of those people who, you know, I don't want my hand held until I want it held. And I really wanted it held at that moment. And
should have asked.
I'll go back.
Just got co-op.
Yeah, I know, but I don't have many friends, Asa. And the kids ain't old enough yet to play it with me. So I was on my own there. So I will go back to it. I said that's the good thing with the Arcadia Discord. Yeah, you want to play things when I got to go to bed for work.
That's true. That's true. We do have some timing issues.
With the Arcadia
Ace is a night owl, and you're like my brother. Who goes
I'm
to
the
bed at like
pumpkin,
7
mate.
o'clock.
I have to.
You're past
I'm
your
up
bedtime now.
I'm up getting up for work before Tony's even going to bed. But yeah, like I say, with the Arcadia Discord, you know, there's a good community of people in there, and we all sort of stream our stuff when we're playing and that. And I know, like, if I'm a little bit stuck when I'm playing it, those guys will sort of just say, nah, don't do that, do this, you know, give you a little bit of advice, a little bit of a G up. I keep trying to put these glasses on because my eyes are like
and then you're
melting from the screens, and then they've got the reflection. No, it's not even the headphones. It's the reflection. It's the reflection. It's carnage.
I look like read like some news.
I look like in Clockwork Orange. Like I've got screens beaming in my eyes. I can't. First world problems, eh?
Chris, do you have a best game ever made? We've done this before. It was one that you made, wasn't it? Did we disqualify ones that you made? No, you can have one that you made. Best game ever.
No, did we do this? I mean, I don't know. Red Dead Redemption 2 is just my go-to. I think it's the greatest environment ever made in a game. Even when you drop back into it, it's just incredible. Maybe they could have tweaked the snow a little bit. It's a bit too shiny at times. But I don't know. Delvin, yeah. I don't know. Elden Ring, I bought it, played it for a bit. Obviously, I think I got a bit further than Darge, but yeah, I came across something which just annihilated me, and I was just a bit like...
So are you not going to touch the DLC when it comes out? Or are you tempted to go back?
No. I mean, my brother absolutely kind of murdered Elden Ring and had these, you know, had a specific setup and things like that. So I don't know if we ever have guests on the show and we do an Elden Ring special. Maybe get him on it to discuss it. Yeah, there's other stuff that I want to play, but I might kind of delve back into it just to understand why it is the greatest game ever made. And maybe a bit of co-op. You seem to be available for cooperative play. Obviously, Darge will be useless because he'll just get one tap by a ball and dragon or something.
I'll have to just get a fucking case of Red Bull and just whack them all off one after the other just to get a couple of hours in with Asa.
I need to finish the game first, to be fair. I think I need to get to the end of it, because then I think you can just use your character to play around after that, as far as I know. Could be wrong. Hope so. Anyway, next question, please. Sorry, Saitama, if that wasn't the answer that you were hoping for.
Saitama is actually happy with the Pro Evo one. He agrees with me there.
Yeah, I'm happy with the Pro Evo one. That's a good answer. Right. TJI has asked, If exclusives go away, by default, it becomes a hardware conversation. By default, Nintendo as a console maker will have to become third party, as competing on hardware isn't their speciality. True, with a question mark? So, if exclusives went away entirely, and you ignore the technical deficit between Nintendo's current platform and the others, and just assume that, like, in practical terms, logistical terms, you could just release games everywhere, then the hardware and services conversation would become very interesting, because they would have to find a way to compete and be relevant. The thing about Nintendo not being, as you say, like, not competing on a hardware front, they're shopping for this from, like, the shops that Microsoft and Sony are visiting are available to everyone, right? Microsoft and Sony, broadly speaking, are using AMD, and Nintendo have contacts with AMD, but they also currently are using Nvidia for theirs. They could become competitive in the hardware space if that was the direction that they wanted to go, just by having different conversations and paying more money. But they are not interested in competing on hardware at the moment, and not interested in sharing their exclusives, and not financially in a position where they need to. I guess we'll revisit that when they do eventually release another console, if it doesn't work out in their favor. For now, though.
Yeah, because there's potentially talk, isn't there, of us going back to the olden days. What I mean by the olden days is, like, the 360, the 360, like, PS3 days, where obviously Sony tried something different with IBM and so on and so forth. Obviously, and ignore the fact that it's kind of like Microsoft, but obviously Microsoft and Satya kind of announced a partnership with Intel to make semiconductors and things within the US, and then there's talk of Microsoft and Xbox might shift over to Nvidia to try and create,
Intel shopping around,
recreate this kind of arms race again, because obviously this AMD RDNA 3, 4, 5, if we just carry on with that cycle, is obviously going to be on parity. And if, as Darge said last week, if the two organisations sit down and have a big come-by-R and say, let's release on each other's consoles, and we'll give you, a percentage and you a percentage, and people can play where they want to. But if Microsoft or Xbox do sign a partnership with with Nvidia, and we obviously know that what the 4090 can do, we know what the LSS can do in comparison, then we may weirdly get back into the old kind of arms race, where it really is down to kind of, console hardware, but either of those routes would still support PC with AMD graphics cards or Nvidia ones. So I think there is a bit of a weird watch this space, as you're saying, Ace. It depends on what the next consoles look like.
Weirdly, if those two, if Xbox and PlayStation went different directions and had different hardware sets, it would simultaneously make exclusives more and less important at the same time. Because obviously you'd have that deviation in hardware and different reasons to purchase each one, and you'd have reason for those platform holders to actually show what their consoles can do and support it and build that audience on it. So it'll become both more and less important, and realistically they're probably going to stay very, very similar, but we shall see. It would be interesting to have that difference in there. Let's have the next question, please. We'll probably do two more, if there are two more, and then we'll wrap up. There's loads. Eradication. That's just you. Eradication is with June 2 coming up. I would love a third-person action adventure. I'm reading slowly because it minimized. Action adventure games set in that universe. Are there any franchises outside of gaming that you would always wish there was a game? And if so, what genre? We had this question, like, really, really similar 2 or 3 weeks ago, and it was surprisingly difficult to answer. So, games and genres that don't currently have, sorry, not games and genres, other medium, like films, books, whatever, that don't currently have a game iteration of. Discworld came up. I'm going to steal that answer. I've never even read a Discworld book. I'm a massive fraud. I'm going to say Discworld. That's a popular answer. People will love me. I'd love to see some more Discworld games.
Discworld 1 and 2, yeah. Discworld 2, I was a PC tester on Discworld 2, and I could complete the thing in about, I don't know, I think it was like 48 minutes or something, but that's just kind of like skipping dialogue and just going ding, 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 do this, do this, do this, do this. But yeah, more Discworld games. I used to love it. I think our point and click adventures have kind of died a bit, haven't they? I was a big fan of point and click, so does anyone remember?
They're
like
difficult in a
Police Quest and
YouTube
stuff?
world.
Yes, absolutely. Police Quest games were good, where they were by Sierra years ago. I used to play like a detective and stuff like that. They were pretty good games. Eradication, I agree. Like I love Dune. Obviously, there's the Dune RTS on Game Pass, early access or whatever, which is pretty decent. But I can't think of anything.
This is one of them questions
Brand-wise,
where your head just fucking takes a shit on you, and you can't think. I mean, I remember Raf, my mate, come up with. What did he come up with? Oh no! Sorry, it was a different question, wasn't it? It was like, what team would you like to see make? And it was From Software making a Lord of the Rings game. That's what he said, wasn't it? Yeah, I don't know. You know what? This is one of them. I'll think about it later and then go, oh yeah, why didn't I say that? Yeah, sorry, mate.
Sorry.
Sorry, I can't think. I don't watch a lot of TV or films either, so
that's my difficulty as well.
Danger Mouse. I would like to see a Danger Mouse game made by the Coalition with full gore. That's what I'd like to see. Eradication.
Fair. That I also want to see that. So.
And a roofing
one
game.
more question.
Yeah, a roofing game made by 343 for me.
I'm not being funny. I bet maybe that should be my if it start a studio. That should be the first game, and then you can be the consultant on it. A roofing game where you're doing your lead work and
I'll be the roofing lead on the game.
You got like Power Wash Simulator and all of that. You could get it if roofing can be made into. Like nice, wholesome, arcadey fun.
We'd like Chris to have a successful game if he comes back to the industry. Not like
Power
just a
Wash is successful, Darge.
Even roofers don't want a roof.
Tony said Roof Simulator Coke edition.
Tony
is a beast. Pepsi edition.
I played that game a while back, Tony. It was overrated.
Right, Tony, this is our last question, I think. Tony has asked, when is Final Fantasy VII R, so it could be remake, it could be remaster, it could be whatever the third one is, coming to the Xbox and the Nintendo Switch? Tony, you appear to have misdirected your question. It's Square Enix that you needed to ask. We are but a humble podcast.
It's going to come now, isn't it? I think it'll come. I think it'll come like obviously after Rebirth and when it's died down and the whole Final Fantasy VII remake fanfare is starting to slowly simmer down. You know, then it'll feel less dirty.
Come out, though. You reckon it's going to come out before the third
part?
Yeah, it's a three-part game. Hell yeah!
Oh, fuck off! They're milking that, and they. They're milking that dry.
Nothing else is working, that's why. Nothing else is making the money.
Jesus. I mean, well, I'd like to...
Simulator?
Jesus Simulator. Good times. That'd be good. That'd be good fun. Yeah, made by the team who make Outlast. That's what I want. Jesus Sim. Yeah, it ain't going to come to the Nintendo Switch, is it? Obviously, unless it's the Switch 2. And it's an absolute beast. But I would have thought so, but now you've said there's a third part and you've completely thrown me.
The thing that really has thrown me in the past is that they had their exclusivity, their timed exclusivity deal, and it expired long ago, and they extended it. And I don't know, that's an unusual behavior in the gaming industry. So how they're extending it, what it's costing them, how much it will continue to cost them going forwards is really difficult to answer. So, Tony, we don't know, do we? How are we supposed to know?
It's costing Sony 900 salaries.
So you've got to factor in Square Enix are getting very cozy with Xbox now, aren't they? You know what I mean? They're starting to put more things over there. I mean, what's that game that I won't play that they showcased?
14.
Visions of Mana, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Is that the Square game? So it was like big, like, oh, Xbox are getting a big one, and then it was like Visions of Mana, and I was like, oh, what's that? But
and they had to put it in their developer direct. Like I say, Square Enix like their marketing. If you can get a good marketing deal with them, then they'll be your friends. But
I think it will come. It's just probably when the whole value proposition of it being exclusive to PlayStation's worn off completely. You know what I mean? Where it won't hurt anyone.
There you go, Tony. You heard it from industry insider Darge that maybe it is. Fucking hell, there's a third game.
Fucking hell. Sit me, Tony, going, fucking hell, there's a third bit. I'd like to see the final of that game before I'm dead. So, yeah, hopefully they're quick with it.
Are you saying I'll be the roofing consultant or whatever it was?
I want the Jesus Christ sim by the Atlas team as well now. Anyway.
Right.
Is that us?
We've reached. The glasses aren't going on your face. Stop trying. Put them down.
I'll put this on.
Pulled out a Batman mask for those that can't see. Chris is celebrating with some balloons.
It's meant to be in the bedroom, that.
No, it's not.
Every time I come to London, you meet me with that mask on.
Oh, I'd get fucking stabbed.
Doesn't matter, you do Batman.
A rogue question popped up then.
Another question.
No, that was the box popping up. There's not another question. We have reached the end. Okay. So what we're going to do is Darge just started chugging the Red Bull, which means he's going to bed after this. It's an unusual choice. Darge, it's an unusual choice because he goes to bed at 10. She's like 6 minutes time.
He's taking his shirt off now.
He is. Tell us about the week that you got ahead of you. Where can people find you? What's going on?
The week ahead. What's it looking like? Got to be fair, I'll probably get on Death Stranding. My lovely, beautiful friend Replicant gifted me a game that I've forgotten the name because I'm thinking it's Brotato, but it's not. It's that poker. What's that poker rogue like?
Blatro, whatever it is. Yeah.
Bratro, or something like that. Yeah, he gifted me that. I might have a little look at that, but I'm like fucking tunnel vision now. I'm like Death Stranding. This is it. We're going to whack this off or whack it out, rather. And,
that's not better, is it? Wait.
Red Bull
we're definitely not whacking it off.
We're going to whack it off.
But we're going to whack it out. And, I want to try and get it done because I'll just, like, there's not enough time for me. You know what I mean? But I ain't going to turn this into a me thing.
So your way of telling us that you're changing career and you're going to become a postman?
I wish.
Amazon delivery driver, but without a van, just carrying.
I'm not sexy enough to be a postman. But anyway, so that's about the strength of me this week. Obviously, you'll no doubt probably have us playing Pokemon Red on a Game Boy emulator on the community stuff on Sunday. And that's it. And you find me on Twitter, just sharing West Ham United goals on the off chance that they win games. And thanks everyone for being here and having nice, gentle banter in the chat. And I'll see you all next week.
Perfect. Chris, you got the fireworks going off. Same question though. What are you up to for the week? Tell people where they can find you.
I will be jumping onto some Helldivers 2. I'm in a busy work hole as always. I'm on Discord in the Gaming Arcadia channel, and obviously I'm on Twitter in the usual place. I tend to just be on there dropping hot takes, as people like to say. But really, I just try to engage with people. But sadly, there are a lot of fools on there who try to chip an opinion out the way. But yeah, I really appreciate everyone dropping by. Obviously, there's some snippets that are not worth asking us, Elden Ring and various other things. But I'll do my homework so we can be more mindful of these difficult questions.
We're never gonna know everything about every game because there's too damn many. I'd love to have played absolutely everything and be able to speak on everything going on, but we do our best, right? Play as much as we can and be aware of as much as we can. And obviously, we've got all of you here and a wide range of opinions going on. So thank you, everyone, so much for coming along, for talking to us, for putting up with us, for not leaving when Darge said he was going to lick. No, I'm not even going to repeat it. I can't. It's too painful to say. We're going to end it there. If you could be so kind as to share things around and try and bring some more people into here, it would be much appreciated. But most of all, come back next week. It'll be great.
Bye.
Thanks all. Bye.